Good morning. Welcome back to the e-Discovery Zone. We're at the TechLaw Solutions booth, day one of Legal Tech New York, and we're having some interviews with a variety of legal spokespeople here. My guest right now is Phillip Duffy from Gibbons in the Newark office.
Correct.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Phillip.
Thanks for having me.
We've been hearing a lot of talk, as you'd expect at this show, about technology and automation and things like predictive coding, but you want to talk about something that I don't think gets enough attention, which is document management and info governance.
Absolutely.
Tell me your take on that. Is that something
Sure.
you deal with in your practice?
Absolutely, and I agree that it doesn't get enough attention. And speaking of that, I think it's important to start. You've got all these little tech law plush toys. I think we're here in New York, and we know who's going to win the Super Bowl. And I want to talk about the real superheroes.
Now,
so
as a
there
New
you
Orleans
go. How's
Saint,
that? Well, Eli's from New Orleans, so
I know I have to cringe when I think of the Super Bowl, and so, but at least it's not the 49ers.
Absolutely. So yeah, I agree, Tom. Unfortunately, I think that records management doesn't get enough attention, and it's almost like that line in Remember the Titans, where they talk about the left side of the line, left side, strong side, the left side of the EDRM. Companies of all shapes and sizes, I think, are recognizing that it is critically important for them to implement an effective records management program. And it's really the first step in complying with future e-discovery obligations. And with judicial opinions coming out that are lengthy opinions, pension committee, RIMCAS, decisions like that are sanctioning folks for not preserving potentially relevant information, it's more important than ever that companies get a hold of that data, get control of that data, and have an effective policy in place that addresses the stages of the information life cycle. You don't have to keep everything forever, but what do we keep? Where is it kept? How long are we going to keep it? And critically, I think, and this is something we can talk about a little more, but critically, I think companies have to recognize the need for a legal hold policy as part of that records management program. And
right.
That's something that, as an attorney, I'm asked to do more and more every day now, is assist companies with putting together those policies.
Well, and that's the question I wanted to ask you. You went right to the point, which is, are your clients asking specifically you, their outside counsel, to help them with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, I'm not a records manager, and there are records management pieces of that certainly I haven't been steeped in, but it's something that you eventually have to really develop a grasp upon, because clients are coming and they're saying, look, we understand that courts are sanctioning litigants. We don't want to be in that situation. We want to take proactive steps to make sure that we're in control of our house. And clients are coming more and more with those questions and asking us to put together those policies. And we've done that quite a bit for companies. The legal hold piece, I think, is so critical. And I've had so many problems over the years where there are very, very smart individuals at very high levels of companies who sometimes are very resistant to put in place a legal hold policy. They get the idea of records retention, but they're afraid that legal hold policy is going to be used as a sword against them later. If they fail to comply, it's going to be the gotcha game.
Right.
And
right.
You have to explain under those circumstances that really you want to be able to use that legal hold policy as a demonstration of the appropriateness of your conduct. And then the burden falls to the other side to be able to say, hey, we don't think what you did is appropriate. If you have a policy, it's going to be their burden to say that what you did wasn't right, as opposed to, in the absence of a policy, you having to set forth that what you did was appropriate.
Right. Are you finding that those inquiries are coming because they've already been burnt in an e-discovery challenge of one sort or another, or just a general overall sense that we better do this, that e-discovery is the flip side of information management?
Right, that's a great question. I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's a bad experience, or sometimes it's a near miss. I was sitting with a client recently, and the client is relating to me, I have to look for all these drafts of contracts, and, if we never had these drafts, we wouldn't have had to produce them, so I don't see why they should be able to ask for them. Well, that illustrates the point, right? I mean, you're right. If all you keep is the final executed instrument, then you don't need to produce all those drafts. But now, once litigation has begun, you have an obligation to preserve those materials, and it merely underscores, it highlights the problem that we're talking about. So, absolutely.
Right. And how much do you interface with? Where do the IT folks fit into this?
Yeah, the IT folks are critically important as well. I think that the development of an effective records management policy is a collaborative venture. It's a holistic kind of approach. You need to involve folks in all different disciplines, legal, IT, business. You have to understand what records are we retaining for legal and regulatory purposes. What things simply have business or historical relevance to the company.
Right.
And then from an IT perspective, why are we, the plans that we have in place, for example, backup tapes and retention, and there's a difference between disaster recovery and and archiving. And you want to stress and help companies understand that the idea of having backup tapes and backup procedures is not to have 75 versions of that.
Right.
It's to be able to recover if something bad happens. And those things have a limited shelf life, not an infinite duration. So,
I've been involved, and the reason I'm laughing is I've been involved in several large matters where dealing with backup tapes was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it had become somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction by IT. Well, we don't have to worry because we've got it on tape.
Right.
When in fact that's a really horrid medium for what we're talking about, for e-discovery purposes.
Sure.
Disaster recovery, one thing.
Yeah.
Finding information quickly for a key custodian or custodians, not such a good way to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you walk around legal tech here and you look at all the booths, and there's so much time and attention devoted to harvesting information, collection, processing. And I think that there's a critical piece missing from those discussions. It's what can we do to reduce the data set at the outset, the very beginning. And an effective records management program allows you to do that. You define what are records and what are not records.
Right.
And the company keeps high quality records that it needs for its business purposes, and things that aren't records or are temporary go the way of the dodo.
How about the cost buy-in? Are your clients willing to spend the money? It's one thing to do this sort of an assessment and say, here's what we should do. Then, as with everything in our field, when they see the price and the sticker shock sets in, are they willing to follow through?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are a number of things that are compelling them to do that. I think that buy-in is critical. It's important that comes from the top. And investing the necessary resources in preparing the policy is important. Similarly, investing the necessary resources in implementing that policy, properly allowing for the training of your employees, the monitoring of that policy, tweaking it as necessary. And I'm finding that the companies that we're fortunate enough to deal with at Gibbons have been, I think, very forward-thinking. They recognize this is something they need to do. Things like, the IRS just recently revised Form 990, which is the information reporting that exempt organizations have to go through. And there's a question right on that revised form that says that asks whether or not those organizations have a written document retention policy.
Wow.
And when the board has to sit there and certify to whether or not they have that, all of a sudden they start looking around and recognize that maybe this is something we need to pay attention to. And
so if you had a couple of key tips, 2 or 3 tips you wanted to give folks in this area, what would your quick advice be if somebody walked up to us right now and said, hey?
Sure. Well, I think that it's important that you recognize that you don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. In other words, get started. You don't need to have a policy. Policies don't have to be, I love when people come in with these telephone book-sized policies.
Right.
Nobody's going to read that. Nobody's going to follow that. You're better off with a short and sweet policy that gets implemented, that people can follow, and then maybe there's an aspiration statement. Maybe there's a place you want to go as an organization over the next 5, 10, or 20 years. But getting something in place now that allows your employees to have some guidance about what types of records we retain, what types of records we don't, and how to tell the difference between the two, I think is critical.
Okay.
So doing something is certainly better than doing nothing.
Better than doing nothing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other things you're looking to see here at Legal Tech while you're here?
No, well, I'm happy to be here at TechLaw Solutions booth. I'm always interested to see what they're doing. So, so this is a great opportunity. So thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we appreciate your coming by. Our special guest has been Phillip Duffy at the Newark office of Gibbons.
Go Giants.
And good luck to the New York Football Giants.
All right.
That's it for the e-Discovery Zone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.